I'm John, I'm a skipper for the Trust, and this week I've been asked to talk to you about buoyage. So to understand buoyage, firstly I need to tell you a story about a king called Henry VIII, who you've probably heard of for having lots of wives, but he was also the king responsible for a lot of our buoyage today, believe it or not. You see, back in 1514 the king was very unhappy. The reason he was unhappy was because when his ships sailed up the Thames, they would frequently end up getting wrecked on rocks, and the local people would then steal the merchandise that King Henry VIII had put on the ships to bring into London, and they'd have it for themselves instead. So clearly the king wasn't very happy about that. So what he did was he set up an organisation called Trinity House and tasked them with coming up with a way of making the Thames more easy to navigate for the ships coming in. And they came up with a series of buoys that you see here, red and green as it's shown in the picture here. They weren't red and green to start with, but for the purposes of this picture it works. And that made it easy for the ships to navigate up to London and offload their merchandise. And therefore the king was very happy. So we've got a lot to thank King Henry VIII for today, making our waters more easy to navigate. And Trinity House is still going today, and they still have the responsibility for all the buoys and lighthouses around the UK. They're established in 1514, so they're over 500 years old, making them one of the oldest charities in the world. So what was agreed was the series of marks to help you navigate into port. And these days, the marks, the green starboard mark has changed colour over the years, but in the 1970s, early 80s, it was agreed that we'd have a red port mark going into port, kept on the port side of the boat, and a starboard mark, a green starboard mark, kept on the starboard side of the boat. Nice and easy that, isn't it? So you're keeping those marks to starboard and these marks to port. Very easy. Now unfortunately, the whole world isn't like that. You see, the world is split into two halves. An organisation called the International Association of Maritime Aids to Navigation and Lighthouse Authorities. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Which is why we call it ILA for short. America had a different system. They wanted it so that when you drive out of a port, you keep the red marks to port and the green marks to starboard. So they have what they call ILA-B in America, okay? And the rest of the world, apart from some areas here in the Far East, we all have ILA-A, okay? So what does that actually look like when you're driving into port? Well, this next clip shows you what that looks like driving into port. Okay, so we're approaching Ostend Port here, and so that we know which way to come into the port, you've got green lateral marks, starboard marks on the starboard side of the boat, so we keep the green to starboard, and over on this side we have some red marks on the port side, and we keep those to the port hand side of the boat. And that's the same throughout Europe and the UK, and means that we can pass safely into the port in a channel without running aground. So that's how we navigate up a channel, keeping the red to port and the green to starboard going into a port. But what about if there's a large rock or a hazard that we don't want to drive our ship onto? What sort of buoys do we use for that? Well, we have a series of marks called Cardinal Marks. Now it's one thing to look at them on paper here, but I found some old marks that have been put in a park locally, and I thought I'd show you those to explain what they are and how they're used. So what we have here is a North Cardinal. We know it's a North Cardinal because the two arrows on the top are pointing upwards to north, and the black bit is on the top of the buoy, as you can see there, and the yellow is at the bottom. And this one is an East Cardinal. Two cones on the top pointing away from each other. Some people remember that, it looks like an Easter egg. And the black bit is at the top and the bottom, and the yellow bit is in the middle. The cones at the top, the arrows always point to where the black bit is on the buoy. Here, this one is a South Cardinal. Two arrows on the top pointing downwards, and the black bit is on the bottom of the buoy. This one here is a west cardinal, the two arrows on the top pointing into each other, okay? And the black bit around the buoy is in the middle, and the two yellow bits at the top, making it a west cardinal. Some people would remember it because it looks like a W if you merge the two cones together. So those are the different types of marks. You've got your north, east, south and west cardinal. And the way we use them is to mark out hazards so that a ship knows which way to pass the hazard in safety. So for example, this one here is what we call a south cardinal. And as we said before, the two cones on the top are pointing to the black on the bottom of the buoy. Okay, so that makes it a south cardinal. Therefore, the danger is here, north of the buoy. So a ship needs to keep south of this mark to not run into the hazard. They're not always all around a rock like this. You just might have one mark if most of the shipping is going this way, telling you to keep south of it. Now the nice thing about this is that when it was put together, somebody had the bright idea for the lights of putting them like a clock face. So for example, the north cardinal mark here, it just continually flashes all the time. And this one here flashes 3 times. It's at the 3 position on a clock. And this one here flashes 6 times and then one long flash. And this one here flashes 9 times. Okay, so that kind of makes that easy to remember. So if you saw one of these marks that was a west cardinal, you would go to the west of the mark, okay, avoiding the hazard. And if you saw a north cardinal, you would go north of the mark and avoiding the hazard to the south of the mark. Okay, so that makes it a little bit easier to understand, hopefully. Now this next page here shows a number of different marks, and you need to have a basic understanding of what they all mean in order to keep your vessel safe on the water. This one is probably the most important one that you need to remember, and this is what they call an isolated danger mark. So what does that mean? It means there's a rock there, and they usually stick the buoy like either on the rock itself or very close to it. So it's saying there's just a one-off piece of danger there that you need to avoid. So you just keep well away from that mark. And it's painted red and black stripes. And a lot of people think of Dennis the Menace in his red and black stripy t-shirt. He's always in trouble, isn't he? So that mark means trouble, okay? And it always has 2 balls on the top, and the light sequence for it is 2 flashes. And we think of it as keep off, keep off. If you remember that and avoid that mark, you won't come into much trouble. And then the other mark I've got down here, this I always think looks like a circus tent, and I associate circuses as being fun, good fun things to do and that, and happy times. And that's basically what this mark means. It means that there's safe water all around it. You can pass either side of it without any trouble whatsoever. So it's called a safe water mark. And depending on where it is, it'll have different light sequences that would light up at night to tell you what that mark was. Okay, and then over here we have what we call special marks, which are always yellow, and they come in various shapes and sizes, but most of the time we'll have this yellow cross on the top, and they can be used for all sorts of things. It can be used to say on a beach, for example, that boats aren't allowed into that section of the beach, it's for swimmers only. It could be used if there's a shooting range out to sea that the Navy use and they want you to avoid that area. Various things that mark can be used. If you saw it on a chart, there's usually notes accompanying it to tell you what that special mark is signifying. Okay, and then over at the top here, you don't see this very often. It's the most recent addition to all the buoyage around the UK from Trinity House. It's a blue and yellow striped mark, and what that's for is to notify you of a wreck in that area. It's a fresh wreck, so a ship that's just recently gone down, so it hasn't been charted on the charts, and therefore it's just to warn shipping to keep away, and it flashes blue and yellow as well to warn you, but you don't see those very often. Then over here, finally, we have this what we call a preferred channel marker, and where this is used is if a channel splits into 2 and you could go either way, it'll tell you which is the preferred channel for you to use. So for example, if you see this on a split in the waterway going in, then you would go to port of that mark. Okay, so the preferred channel is to port of it. and the other one, preferred channel to starboard, you go the other way. Okay, now then, last time I did one of these talks on flags, I left you with a challenge, and this is going to be no different. Okay, so we've gone through all the buoys and everything, so what I want you to do is to tell us what this mark here is. Okay, and I hope you can see that properly, but it's got black at the bottom of the buoy, it's got yellow top, and it has two black arrows pointing down. Okay, and the other mark I want you to tell us that it means, what it means is this one here. Okay, so it's red and black stripes going up it and two balls on the top, and if it was flashing at night it would flash like this, like that. Okay, so hopefully you remember what they mean, and you can tell us if you know them. Okay, so that concludes the talk on buoyage. Hope you found that interesting and informative, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of you back on the water next year when we can get those boats back out again. Have fun.